we're going to try a little thought experiment. We're going to jump back in time to a moment of huge technological panic, the dawn of genetic engineering, just to see what it can teach us about all the anxieties swirling around AI today. And trust me, you'll be pretty surprised by how familiar it all sounds.
Imagine this. It's the late 90s, you turn on the TV, and that's what you hear.
I mean, the headlines were straight out of a sci-fi movie. They were promising this world that was, both completely incredible and absolutely terrifying at the same time. And no, this wasn't some movie trailer. This was the real, intense, and very public debate that was happening over the possibility of human cloning. So, where did this all kick off? Well, back in the 90s, scientists over in Scotland successfully cloned a sheep. You've probably heard of her, Dolly. And one scientist famously said the genie was out of the bottle. And just like that, the idea of cloning humans went from theory to a very, very real fear. The whole world just erupted. In this whole moment, it forced us to wrestle with two huge questions. First off, what exactly were we so afraid of? And maybe more importantly, do those old fears tell us anything about our own anxieties around artificial intelligence right now? And look, this wasn't just some quiet scientific discussion happening in a lab. Oh, no. It became a massive cultural flashpoint. It forced a global conversation about everything. The definition of family, identity, what it even means to be human. The funny thing is, the science itself was often described as being blindingly simple. I mean, you take a cell, you fuse it with a donor egg that's had its own DNA taken out, you create an embryo, and bam, 9 months later, you've got a genetic twin. Simple on paper, sure, but ethically, it was an absolute minefield. So on one side of the argument, you had people like Dr. Lee Silver. For them, it was all about freedom, about choice. They saw cloning as just another tool in the reproductive toolbox, a way for people to have kids using their own genetics. Simple as that. But then, on the other side, you had bioethicists like Dr. Patrick Dixon, who saw a much, much darker future. They were worried that cloning wouldn't be done for noble reasons, but for ego trips. Or, even more chillingly, to literally create human beings as a source for spare parts. And this really boils the whole debate down, doesn't it? On the one hand, you have these very deep personal hopes, helping families who are struggling, saving lives with perfect genetic matches. But on the other hand, you've got these huge, societal, almost dystopian fears. Dictators making armies of themselves, a total loss of individuality, and this really chilling idea of designing children with a specific pedigree. And this debate wasn't just abstract, not at all. You just have to look at the real-world story of the Ayala family. Their daughter, Anissa, was dying of leukemia. She needed a bone marrow transplant, but they couldn't find a donor. So in a decision that sparked a ton of controversy, they decided to have another child, Marissa, specifically hoping she would be a match. And she was. Marissa saved her sister's life. The family later said that if cloning had been an option, it would have taken all the guesswork out of it. It would have been a 100% guaranteed match. For them, this technology was literally the difference between life and death. Okay, so let's just pause here for a second. Creating a being for a very specific purpose, worrying about identity and what makes someone an individual, the desire to select a particular set of traits. Does any of that ring a bell? Seriously, just think about the conversations we're having right now about artificial intelligence. That exact same tension between incredible, amazing potential and profound, terrifying risk. The same basic questions about what it means to be human. It's all right there. It's just wearing a new technological code. And that brings us right to today. Because what's so interesting is that the frantic, headline-grabbing debate of the past has now moved into a much more structured place, the university classroom. What used to be pure panic is now, it's part of the curriculum. So here's the really crucial point. While the ethical questions are so similar, our way of answering them has actually evolved. We've started to move from a cycle of just pure panic to a much more deliberate process. I mean, take a look at this. Courses like this one on AI ethics are designed to do exactly that. Instead of just reacting after the technology is already out there, the whole goal is to create a framework so we can understand the value trade-offs before it's fully unleashed. And this is where the connection just becomes crystal clear. That fear from the 90s about creating a child with a specific pedigree, well, today that's a lecture called Bias in Data and Algorithms. worries over the rights and the value of a cloned human, now we debate that as fairness and machine learning. And the huge, broad impact on society, that's now a formal discussion on the social implications of AI. It's uncanny. The language is definitely different, but the core fear, it's identical. The course description warns that an algorithm can harm a subcategory of the population due to bias. I mean, that is the exact same fundamental anxiety we had about cloning, the fear that a new technology could be used to value some human traits over others, and that it could have disastrous consequences. So what does this all show us when we put it side by side? We're seeing this clear evolution in how we respond to world-changing technology. It's a really fundamental shift from just panicking to creating a process. You see, the tech itself is always going to change. Yesterday, it was gene splicing. Today, it's generative AI. Tomorrow, who knows? But those deep, underlying ethical questions about creation, about identity, and about what it really means to be human, they are remarkably consistent. They just don't go away. And that is the key takeaway here. What's different is our approach. We're learning slowly but surely to tackle these massive questions, not just with fear, but with frameworks. We're trying to move from just reacting to scary headlines to proactively building structured ways to analyze the risks and the rewards. Which, of course, leaves us with one final, absolutely massive question. The last great debate was about the ethics of copying a human body. The next one is about the ethics of creating a non-human mind. The question is, are we ready for that?